Hello one and all, and welcome to today's performance, where I'll be doing something a little different by showing you a way to break all progression in Generation 3's Kanto games, along with how one minor change can set a player from being completely trapped to undergoing hours of torment just to escape this softlock. This video will be split into two sections. The first half we'll be going over the setup, and then we will see how the trapped player is able to escape. So as stated before, the first thing you'll need is a copy of Pokemon Fire Red or Pokemon Leaf Green. Then you must play through the game until you have beaten Blaine. To completely stop the player's progression, once this lock is set up, it is very important that you don't collect any of the fishing rods throughout your journey up until this point. Once you have walked out of the Cinnabar Island gym, you'll be greeted by Bill. He will offer the player a voyage over to the Sevii Islands to help him out with a task. You must decline his proposal immediately. He will understand and go and wait for you within the Cinnabar Islands Pokemon Center, which gives us the best opportunity to set up almost every other part of our little trap. First, fly over to Cerulean City, head north and capture an Abra. I'll explain why it has to be a wild Abra and not one attained at the game corner later on in the video. Once acquired, return back to Cinnabar Island, walk inside the Pokemon Center, add Abra to our party, and then heal via Nurse Joy. Next, go ahead and discard every item, berry, and TM that you have collected up until this point. Be sure not to miss any items hidden inside the PC as well. Also, make sure that the player has no money when the lock is started. To do this, either buy up all the items you can and toss them away, or take a trip down to the game corner and lose all your money, like I did. Now that the player has no money to their name, and their only belongings are some key items and HMs, take flight one more time over to Fuchsia City and talk to the move deleter. Have him remove every HM from all of your Pokemon. Follow this by using Abra's teleport to go back to Cinnabar Island. This step is why it's very important that we don't enter any other Pokemon Center after adding Abra to our team. Walk to the PC and release every Pokemon, including any fossils too, until Abra is the only one left in your party. We went to the move deleter beforehand because we cannot release any Pokemon that know HMs. Speak with Bill and take to the seas. After landing at one island, his colleague will give you a quest to retrieve a meteorite. You will be handed the Tri-Pass, allowing you to sail between the first three islands of the Sevii archipelago. Quickly make a quick stop to 2 Island, and hope you don't get into any wild encounters. If so, try your best to run. Behind the house at the top of Cape Brink, you will find a rare candy. Throw it away like everything else. Finally, teleport back to 1 Island, heal for good measures, and save one last time. With this, you have now trapped anyone who dares to pick up this save file to forever be trapped on these 3 islands. Let's switch perspectives and look at the situation that we are now in through the eyes of someone else loading into this save file. One of the first things you might notice is that your bag is filled with nothing but key items and HMs. No regular items to sell or any Pokeballs in which to catch any additional Pokemon. Speaking of which, you look at your party and find a shiny Abra caught on either Route 24 or 25, and will have an average level of 10 or 11. The only moves this Pokemon will know is Teleport, which just sends you back to the Pokemon Center on 1 island. You head outside and reach the waves of this island, but sadly, without a Pokemon that can learn Surf, you cannot explore these routes any further. You check to see what HMs Abra can learn, only to find that the answer is just Flash, which isn't going to help you too much in this situation. You next speak to the deckhand inside the harbour, only to find out that you can't return to Kanto, not until you help Bill and his friend out with their quest. You head to 2 Island and speak with the owner of the game corner, only to be interrupted by a gang of bikers, who then ride on to Sevii Island. The owner pleads with you to find his missing daughter, who was last seen on the same island as where those bikers were heading. Once there, you find yourself confronted, and now have to battle 4 trainers in a row, with your underleveled Abra only knowing non-damaging moves. Even if you went into battle with struggle activated, your Pokemon wouldn't survive the 4 back-to-back battles without any healing items. As the story can't progress until these bikers are defeated, you shift plans and head towards 2 Island, as you know this location has access to wild Pokemon. However, with no money or Pokeballs, this plan doesn't really go anywhere. After speaking to every available NPC and searching every corner of every island, do you find that the only item that you can reach is unfortunately sat behind a tree that needs to be cut down. If only Abra could learn the HM for cut. So you can't capture any wild Pokemon, but what about battling them? If you can get enough XP, Abra will evolve, and then maybe you can defeat the bikers. The first issue is that every Pokemon in these grasses of Cape Brink outlevel your Abra by 20 levels or more. Not only that, but they always one-shot you if they attack. Now, maybe by some string of luck, you happen to battle an Oddish or Bellsprout that only spams status moves. The only downside is both will be able to survive enough struggles before your Abra faints to its own recoil. So, to sum up your situation, you are trapped between 3 islands with no way home, as you are blocked by 5 necessary battles, the first 4 being a group of bikers that you have to battle within direct succession of one another. You have no healing items, Pokeballs, or money to even buy what you need. Training and capturing Pokemon is pretty much impossible. You cannot trade with another game either, as the player must have at least 2 Pokemon in order to begin a trade. So, the only Pokemon you have on hand is a low-level shiny Abra that can only use Teleport and maybe Flash. With that, I am confident in saying that if anyone found themselves in this situation, their only option would be to say goodbye to this Abra and start a new game. But what if things were slightly different? What if we were to give this player 1 extra item during our setup? An item which turns this scenario from one of complete entrapment to one where escape is possible, if the player is willing to put in a bit of time. This 1 item that turns this from a hard-locked cartridge of Pokemon Fire Red or Leaf Green into a soft-locked one is the Old Rod. While setting up this situation, if the original owner grabs the Old Rod from Vermilion City, then the trapped player will have all the tools they need in order to return back to Kanto, with the shiny Pokemon by their side. After grabbing the Old Rod, set everything up how it was done previously. Leave the player with no items, TMs, or money inside the Pokemon Center of 1 island with our level 10 Abra. Hand them the cartridge and tell them to get back to Kanto as quickly as possible. Here is what that may look like. Just like before, battling the bikers and any wild Pokemon will almost completely result in Abra fainting. Every Pokemon on these islands are unfortunately too bulky for our Abra to take out, until we use the Old Rod. Using the Old Rod in any body of water will put the player against a level 5 Magikarp that only knows the move Splash. Finally, a worthy opponent. Now, all we have to do is get Abra to use Struggle and take out enough Carps in order to evolve into Kadabra, and learn our first decent attacking move, Confusion. But, how many Magikarps would Abra need to beat? And just how long would this take? Well, I'm glad to let you know that I've done the maths and even had my workings out. So, forewarning, if this part isn't of interest to you, then please move forward to the next section of the video, where I'll go into the next part of this great escape. However, for everyone else, let's get into it. We'll be using a level 10 Abra instead of the level 15 we could get from the game corner, as it's the lowest average one which will add so much more time to the player's task. First things first, head into your options, disable the battle animations, and set text speed to fast. Once that's done, open your bag, and set the old rod to your selectable item. This way, every cast of the rod will go from a trip into the bag after every use, down to a single button press. Next, you need to find the right spot of water to fish in. Personally, I would suggest the pier of One Island, as it's the closest area to any Pokemon Center. We can throw out our line and start the long process of battling Magikarps. To answer how many Magikarps we need to defeat, Abra at level 10 has a total EXP growth of 560. To reach Kadabra at level 16, our Abra needs to reach a total EXP growth of 2,535, meaning that in order to evolve, they will need to gain 1,975 EXP. Meanwhile, Magikarps at level 5 will award a total of 14 experience when defeated in battle. So, if we take our needed 1,975 experience and divide it by the 14 experience that will be awarded for every battle, we find out that in order to evolve our Abra, we will need to best a total of 142, rounded up, Magikarps. Now that we have this number, we can start looking to how long this endeavour will take. Between levels 10 to 16, our Abra will go from using Struggle 3 times per battle down to 2. I found that measuring the time that these battles last, once throwing out our fishing line, takes around 27 seconds for the 3 hits, and 19 when it only takes 2. This means we are left with an average of 23 seconds per battle, which, if we then multiply that by the 142 carps we need to beat, we find that involving our Abra will take us around 55 minutes of non-stop battling. So a little under an hour to complete. That's not so bad, until you consider that every time the player uses the old rod, they're not always guaranteed to hook a Pokemon. So, we also need to add the amount of time that the player will waste just by trying to get into an encounter. To do this, I recorded the hits and misses for my first 30 uses of the old rod. What I found is that across the 30 times I used this item, I landed a total of 12 Magikarps. Not only that, but across each set of 10, only 4 would hit, while 6 would miss. This leaves us with a fraction of 12 over 30. And when simplified down, we get 2 over 5. Converting that into a percentage, we end up with 40%. So, anytime the player uses the old rod, they will have a 40% chance to encounter a wild Pokemon. Using this, we find out how much time we lose when we don't get a bite. The player will be missing 60% of the casts that they take. The time it takes to use the old rod, only for nothing to happen, and then reusing the same item again, takes on average 10 seconds. Because we know that 40% of the hits that we land equals a total of 142 Magikarps, to find the 60% that we're missing, we just have to take that 40% of 142 and half it, leaving us with 71, or what would be our 20%. Now we just add that 20% to the 40%, or in this case 71 plus 142, ending us with 213, or the 60% of Magikarps that we are missing across this Softlock. Taking this number of 213 and multiplying it by 10 seconds, we end up with an additional time of 35 minutes and 30 seconds to add on top of the 55 minutes we already have to spend battling these red fish. But wait, that's still not all, because I'm sure some of you know that we'll be healing Abra after every few battles due to the recoil that we'll be taking using Struggle. This would be fine if every trip to the Pokemon Center only healed our health, but it will also be restoring Abra's use of Teleport, meaning we also need to spend extra time depleting Abra's power points time and time again. On average, an encounter where we use teleport takes 18 seconds to complete. If we multiply that by teleport's 20 pp, each time we heal, we then have to spend a total of 6 minutes before we can start using struggle once again. So how many journeys to the Pokemon Center will the player have to take? Per battle, Abra will be losing 3 HP, and between levels 10 to 16, Abra will be battling an average of 10.5, rounded up to 11, carps before needing to go back to the Pokemon Center to heal. If we take 11 and divide it by the 142 Magikarps we need to defeat, we are left with 12.9 trips to the Pokemon Center, or 13 if we want to give ourselves a clean number to work with. So if we take our 13 trips and times that by 6 minutes, we gain an additional 1 hour and 18 minutes in order to evolve our Abra. Removing the use of teleport will actually take more time than it will to battle the Magikarps themselves. However, this finally gives us the total time for this section of the Softlock. Adding together the time it takes to battle the Magikarps, the time we'll be using to use up teleport, and finally, the amount of time wasted when we don't even get an encounter, leaves us with a total of 2 hours, 48 minutes, and 30 seconds. So after nearly 3 hours and 142 Magikarps, Abra finally evolves into Kadabra and learns an attacking move. Now that we have access to Confusion, a psychic move that will deal super effective damage against all Pokemon that we are required to battle, do we go and confront the bikers once more on Sevii Island. Sadly, this doesn't go the player's way, as even after evolution, Kadabra will still have a few shortcomings that make these battles difficult. You see, the Abra line has their best stats in both their speed and their special attack. However, this is balanced out by their terrible attack stat, but more importantly, their awful physical defense. With all the bikers' Pokemon using either normal or poison moves, both of which are classed under physical damage in Generation 3, will the player find themselves losing 1 out of the 4 battles as Kadabra is beaten down time and time again, as you are unable to heal between the battles. How should our player proceed with this roadblock? Unlike the prior section, I won't be doing any maths or giving any statistics, as these battles focus so heavily on luck that trying to give you any average time to complete this section would be, well, impossible for someone like me. So instead, I will break down why these battles are even more challenging than already stated, and what route I believe takes the shortest amount of time to complete. First off, I believe that the player should keep battling the bikers, instead of battling any wild Pokemon found at Cape Brink, as Kadabra will only have a good matchup against Pokemon that are part Poison type, as all the other encounters, apart from the water Pokemon, will be hitting with normal type moves, which once again will be dealing physical damage going off of Kadabra's weak physical defense. Battling the bikers will also grant more experience per Pokemon defeated than any wild encounter would. Sure, you'll be visiting Nurse Joy more frequently, but with the Sevii Island Pokemon Center mere steps away from the gang, it won't take too long to get back into the fight. Unfortunately, money will still be an issue. Even if you make it past the first 3 grunts, but then lose the Cue Ball Praxton, any money you have earned up until that point will be taken away. So you'll have to beat all 4 before you can even think about buying any healing items or Pokeballs. As for the battles themselves, as I had mentioned earlier, they will be relying heavily on luck. You'll need the first coughing to hopefully spam Smokescreen, while then landing every attack that you make. Because all it needs is 1 sludge and you'll be heading back to Nurse Joy with no experience or money gained to show for it. There were many battles where Kadabra was around level 20 and could make it through most of the gang members. Slowly but surely, my shiny Pokemon was getting stronger and stronger with every knockout it was lucky enough to get. Until we met with Praxton, our main antagonist for this trial. With both of his Pokemon evolved, they will not only take more hits to knock out, but need fewer attacks to cause Kadabra to faint. But the true horror of this trainer lies with his lead, Weezing. This Weezing had ended so many runs. Once Kadabra was strong enough to start learning moves like Reflect or Recover, which worked great for stopping all the one-hit KOs that I had been taking up until this point, does this Weezing decide to show up and ruin my plans entirely? Because all it has to do is use self-destruct on turn 1 and I'm sent back to the very beginning. The worst part was that even if it didn't go kaboom, then it most likely lowered my accuracy with Smokescreen, only to faint and then let his muck come in and clean the floor with me, as Kadabra would fail to land any of its next hits. However, after many attempts I finally hit the run. I had enough speed and power to take out all the early grunts, then Praxton, after surviving an attack from its Weezing that wasn't a self-destruct, would faint, leaving his muck to come in, wasting its first turn lowering my defense, which frankly wasn't needed, then wasting its second to increase its own evasion, which didn't matter as it was unable to dodge my Kadabra's final attack, and letting me pass on this section of the Sevii Island Softlock. I hope you see why I couldn't give any numbers to the likelihood of getting through this section, as you are counting on so many factors to go your way in order to win. While I think it's possible to pass this part in a much faster time, I got through with a level 34 Kadabra after roughly 40 minutes of endless battling. But with that, we finally pass the hardest roadblock of this challenge. Now with some cash, we can go and buy some Pokeballs, capture a Magikarp or any other Pokemon onto Island, and finally trade our Abra over to a different cartridge, allowing us to claim the reward without even leaving the islands. But what if you still wanted to escape? With only one mandatory trainer in our way to finish our quest, it shouldn't take too much time. It helps that they only use Pokemon that are part poison and that Kadabra can take out with much ease. We head into Berry Forest, run from the Hypno, attacking the lost girl, and return her home to her father, the owner of the Game Corner. He will hand us the long-awaited meteorite, which, once handed over to Bill and his friend, we can finally hop back on the boat and return home to Kanto. And with the extra time taken to complete the last leg of this journey, the final time it took me to escape this softlock clocked in around 3 hours and 45 minutes. And I hope you went and captured a Psyduck, Slowpoke or any flying Pokemon after beating those bikers, otherwise you'll find yourself free from the Sevii Islands, but trapped on Cinnabar once back in Kanto, because the only Pokemon that you can catch here are those found within the mansion and Magikarps, which, unless you want to take the time to evolve one, like you did for the Abra, you'll be trapped, as Gyarados is the only Pokemon out of the bunch that can learn Surf. Now I know that there are some softlocks out there that can have the player trapped for days, weeks, if not months, but as this was the first one that I would be discussing on this channel, I thought I would start off with something short and sweet. So, that's curtains everyone. I originally came up with this idea while streaming a Nuzlocke on the Sevii Islands, which you can find a link to on my channel. While you're there, maybe consider subscribing if you haven't already, and if you're enjoying my content so far. Please feel free to leave your thoughts or ideas in the comments below, as it can be a real great motivator for me to get more videos and streams done. But, until next time everyone, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the show.